Hello, I'm Joseph Malazzi, creator of Dark Matter, and you are listening to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello, and welcome to another 2,500 tons of awesome edition of Kneel Before Pod. I'm your host, Craig McKenzie, and this episode is all about the 2013 Giant Robot on Giant Monster mashup, Pacific Rim. Joining me for some Giant Robot on Giant Monster action is Kat.
Hello.
Hello. How goes it?
It goes okay, actually. Yeah.
Sound confident when you're...
in my okayness. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, it's all going pretty good. Yeah, I've been kind of focusing on like a lot of fiction writing and stuff, but the universe has pulled me back into the film world, and so I'm just going along with what the universe is telling me. And yeah, it's been a good week so far.
Always listen to the universe.
Crossing fingers, yeah, absolutely.
It's been a good week so far, and as we record, it's only Monday, so...
Oh no, see, I don't have weekends because of my job.
Yeah.
So when I say week, I mean the last 7 days. But I understand where you're coming from.
My week is, based on the fact it's only Monday, alright?
It's okay so far, yeah. As far as beginnings go.
I'm still kicking about, it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so we're here to talk about it's quite an old film now, it's not that old. The Pacific Rim, 2013 is when it came out, according to IMDb, so 4 years old. How did that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I was looking at some old interviews with Del Toro and Beacham, and I realized, I looked at the publishing date, and it said, like 2013, or some of them dated back to 2012. It's like, how did this happen? It feels like yesterday, and yet, here we are.
Yeah, we've had like 50 Marvel movies since then.
We truly have.
And we're on our fourth reboot of the DC Cinematic Universe as well. Something like that. Soon to be fifth, I don't know how many reboots they've had. Lost track. So yeah, it was a rarity in the cinema world. I mean, I know a lot of people compare it to various things, but it is in itself an original universe, not adapted directly from anything else. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a rarity for a big budget blockbuster.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's 4 years old, but still, in case anyone listens to the first 5 minutes of the podcast, checking to see what we think of it without spoiling it, and then decide whether they're going to watch it from that or not. There must be one. Law of averages said one person does that. So, what are your thoughts on the film without spoilers?
Yeah, so when I went to see this film, I went into it fully expecting to hate it. Just based on the trailer and stuff, I didn't think it looked particularly good. In fact, I only really went to see it because a friend wanted to see it, and I used to work at a cinema, and I said, okay, I'll take you, it's fine. And so it was an IMAX screening, and I go in, and within the first 5 minutes, I was sold. The world building in the opening sequence is so strong, so solid, that I knew that, like, from those first minutes, that it wasn't going to be a run-of-the-mill action movie. There was more to it right off the bat, like a vision of the setting that was so detailed that I could immediately believe it. And I mean, I think, still to this day, the first 7 or so minutes of the film are by far my favorite thing about it. In an incredible story that could have been a movie on its own, and that's one of my arguments, perhaps, in favor of the film, which I'll come back to later. And I mean, yes, as you said, it is the influences are very clear. It's very clearly a love letter to monster movies and the anime and manga and kaiju movies that have come out of Japan. But it really has a lot of heart. Like, we can talk about monsters and robots all day, and we probably will. But when it comes down to it, Pacific Rim is a story about people. It's about the main character, Raleigh, who learns how to deal with the loss of his brother. It's about Mako, the Japanese girl who proves her worth. It's about, like, the leadership and sacrifice and the importance that is the connection between people, the relationships between people. I don't know, like, this movie gives me so many feelings. Like, I love it. And I love that it's original, as you said. You know, it's not based on anything, you know, like an existing IP of any kind. A dude came up with this idea, talked to Guillermo del Toro, they developed it together, and it's an entire, universe of its own with a lot of detail in the world building that we do get glimpses of it in the film, but it just goes so much deeper than anyone expects, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I absolutely loved it. I didn't go in expecting to hate it. I went in expecting to love it because, you know, the 10-year-old boy in me sees a giant monster getting punched by a giant robot, and I'm like, I'm there. I have to see this. And, you know, the trailer had the using a ship as a baseball bat and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, there's no way I won't enjoy this. And I went to see it, and I got a lot more out of it than I expected. It's one of those things, whenever Del Toro touches a project, you know, it can go from being kind of a mediocre fun idea to something that's a bit more than that. I mean, arguably the Hellboy films could have been kind of disposable fluff if it wasn't him. But there's more to them, and Pan's Labyrinth is more of a visual journey than it is anything else. But even then, there's, you know, a little bit extra in there, but that's his from the ground up. So there's so much in here. I keep going back to it. It's one of my favourite blockbusters of, I guess, the past 10 years. You know, whenever I want to watch something that I find a bit fun, I go back to it, and I like the characters, at least for the most part. There's a couple that irk me somewhat, but I'll come on it.
Yeah, we'll come to it.
But yeah, it's just cool. It looks great. It's very stylish, you know, and it's I think a testament to sort of Del Toro's talent is if you look at any of the clips from the second one that isn't out yet, it's like that looks super mediocre. I mean, I've only seen about 20 seconds of it or something based on what we've seen, but you know, it just looks. It looks like it'll probably be fine.
It looks like what people expected the first movie to be.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me when the sequel becomes, you know, that generic idea that people have of the first one, and it's like, no, but watch the first one. It's really good, actually. Like, give it a chance instead of this. But yeah, like we'll come to our thoughts of that in. Yeah.
We'll come to the sequel in due course. Let's talk about the first one first. Yeah. I don't really have anything further to say that isn't spoilery, so if you're all tapped out without spoiling, then we can just move on.
Yeah, sure.
Pilots ready to connect. Two pilots engaged in neural bridge. Ready to activate the Jaeger in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, now we're free to talk about whatever we want, such as the freedom of the post-spoiler noise. So you mentioned world building, and you know it does that thing that almost every other science fiction film does these days, you know, where it starts off with a 5-minute prologue of here's how we got to this point. And usually I find those really tedious, although apparently Del Toro approached some documentary filmmaker that he really liked to film those, to do those first 5 minutes as if it was a documentary, and there is a kind of found footagey documentary-ish feel to it.
Yes.
As it goes through the kind of, there was a monster attack, and then we decided to build giant robots, and now we're here, you know. So I didn't mind the prologue. I mean, I'm not sure the prologue my favourite part of the film, but because I just detest those.
I mean, same. Perhaps I like it so much because it's so different to those usual, like, well, let me tell you, once upon a time, this and this happened, and so now we have giant robots. Like, it could have been like that, but because of that documentary feel, like, it felt so real. It felt like, oh, okay, like, I can believe that this is the version of the world that we're seeing right now. So, like, with that prologue, like, it's already sucked you into its world and said, right, okay, so now Monsters vs. Robots is a thing that happens every day. It's normal for people to see and expect this. So it's normal for you too, as a viewer. And so you sit there and you're like, all right, yes, I guess this is fine. It's a big premise to kind of give you in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that perhaps a lot of people who don't like Pacific Rim will say, oh, but this is silly, the giant robots. And it's like, all right, okay. Yes, but also shush.
Well, it's one of those things where, let's just put these plasma cannons on top of a wall and we're fine. But, then you wouldn't have giant robots.
Yeah.
I often feel like the UN crisis meeting had a couple of, like, anime nerds sitting there who were like, right, guys, I'm going to suggest this. And
yeah, okay, but have we thought of this idea? Imagine this concept.
Have we tried making giant robots to fight them? And it's like, they'll never go for it. They'll never listen. And it's like, that's a great idea.
Actually, it is a great idea. I have... So, because I really enjoyed that part of the film, and I enjoyed the bits that kind of gave us a glimpse into the war before we've come to the moments in Pacific Rim, because Pacific Rim really is the end of a war between humanity and these giant monsters. Like, this has been going on for, like a good 15 years before Pacific Rim's the story comes into play. Yeah. And so I got really into, like, right around the time that the film came out, a few months later, there was the novelization of the film, which I'm guessing was based on the original script rather than the film itself, because there are some differences between the novelization and the movie. And then there was also a couple of comic books, one that was Pacific Rim Tales from the Year Zero, which details the first kaiju attack, and then how they came up with the Jaeger program, and how the Jaeger program works, like specifically about the drift. And now that's kind of what sold the whole thing to me, because the idea of drift compatibility is something that the film doesn't necessarily go very deeply into, but it's by far my favorite thing to come out of Pacific Rim. The idea that two people or more than two people could have a way of thinking that is so similar that their brains could effectively form a giant brain that is powerful enough to, like, handle the neural load from, like, a massive machine. Because that's what the drift is, but they don't really explain it in the film. It's just kind of like, oh, we're drift compatible. It's like, actually, that's a big deal. That's actually, like, kind of massive.
Yeah, they simplify it with family members can do it just naturally. And then they don't explain why Riley and Mako have compatibility, other than they just do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's a moment where, like, Mako makes a list of other pilots that might be compatible with Riley. And it's like, how do you decide this? How do you decide who is compatible with this other person? Like, what are the parameters here? Like, I want to know. So in the comic book Tales from Year Zero, we find out how the Jaeger program works and how drift compatibility is decided, specifically based on the scientists who first come up with it, because one of them gets injured because he tries to pilot the machine by himself. And then it's like, oh, okay, so, like, one person can't do it. So I think it's him and his wife who first decide to, like, try and pilot Jaeger together. And because they share, like, a deep emotional bond, and because they've spent a lot of time together, like, drift compatibility is how your minds work. Like, in a train of thought, will you have the same thought? Are you thinking what I'm thinking, but like all the time?
Right.
That's why family members are very good at it, because like if you're with your brother, like me and my sister, like we have spent most of our lives together, we think in a very similar way, so yes, like we would be drift compatible, but that's not to say that you wouldn't be drift compatible with a friend, or like someone, in the case of Raleigh, someone you've just met, but like they think in very much the same way as you, and that is proven by like at some point they have like a little sparring like match in the film, and it's like, oh, okay, so like they fight the same way, they anticipate each other's movements because they know what the other person would think of doing, because that's what they would do.
Yeah.
And so hence drift compatibility. But so it's explained visually, I suppose, but it's such a great concept. It's by far, I think, like the best thing to come out of it. Like there's just so many applications. It's breathed new life into like fandom culture at large. The idea, if Merry and Pippin from Lord of the Rings piloted a Jaeger, like they would be drift compatible, and their Jaeger would probably be called Treebeard, like things like that. There was a moment on the internet where everybody was talking about which characters from other fictional mediums would be drift compatible and what their Jaegers would be called, and it was a glorious time on the internet, I have to say.
I must have missed that. I didn't seem to get into too much fandom chat about this film, which is a shame.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I remember just coming across how, it's good, but it's not like amazing, that people would be saying, and then I don't know, they would go and see whatever other generic thing was out at the same time. But yeah, it's weird because it's a clever film, kind of masquerading as a silly film, and there's a lot of silly things about it. The giant robot concept itself is really silly because it's probably the least effective thing you could think of to combat this threat. Or the fact that they don't have a legion of them just standing outside the rift, just to make sure. So that would make sense. The monsters come out of the rift. You need to leave them standing next to it. They don't seem to.
No, yeah.
Or maybe they did at one point and that just didn't work. I don't know. Because there's a lot of years where stuff happens. Because you see that attack where Riley's brother dies. And then after that it skips 5 years and everything's went to hell.
Exactly, and even before that you have like a lot of time between the first attack and whenever Raleigh's brother died. Like all of that time, the entire war is basically off camera, and we don't really learn the specifics. I always wondered, like the technician on the brig, he's always like, oh, Kaiju signature is rising, and it's a level blah blah, and this is its code name, and things like that. And it's like, hey, how do you know its shape? How do you know, like all of these things? Like, we never really understand how any of that works. Yeah. Again, some of the extended universe stuff, like, does tell you a little bit, but, obviously all of that is, like, sci-fi technology that doesn't exist. So, it's all a bit up in the air. Anything can work at this point.
Choi, who looks like he's just been plucked out of the Doctor Who convention that he was really enjoying.
Yes, he looks really great in the suspenders.
With his 11th Doctor outfit, just
pretty much, yes.
Yeah. I quite liked his character, although I couldn't tell you a single thing about him, other than he likes to go after women and dangerous situations.
He's a womanizer. Yeah, he's a womanizer, and he's a real nerd about engines and stuff. Yeah, that's kind of it. Yeah, I was reading some old reviews and stuff of the film, and somebody said that like the characters in the film, they all seem to be born out of stereotypes, but they are then humanized beyond stereotypes.
Yeah,
and I really like that, and it's true, I think.
Yeah, I actually find Raleigh to be the least interesting character, and I would almost argue against him being the main character. I think Mako is,
Yeah, I think so.
Everything's about her, her emotional journey. His is kind of done. He's accepted the fact that his brother is dead, and he's just kind of getting on with it. But
I think he has a journey too, like into accepting other people back in his life, because his knee-jerk reaction to losing his brother and effectively a side of him that is irreplaceable, was to wall himself off, go work lonely jobs where he doesn't talk to other people, and this entire story basically brings him back into having to deal with other people, having to accept other people in his life and in his heart and in his brain, letting somebody else in where he's been closed off for so long. So for him, I suppose, it is a simpler, kind of less complex journey, but it is in itself, it's valid, some people do go through this, in periods of their life where, we shut people off and then something will happen and we are brought back into, socializing and caring for others where we've, tried not to and things like that. So, I do like Raleigh, but you are right. I think Mako is the main character here.
I wonder if I would have liked Raleigh better had he been played by someone a bit more charismatic than Charlie Hunnam.
Ooh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I was reading that people like Henry Cavill were considered, and I think he might have been better.
Oh, I don't know. I don't like him. I'm not convinced by Henry Cavill as an actor yet.
Man from U.N.C.L.E. is the one that shows that he has some charisma to him.
Yes, it's the only film of his I've seen that I've gone, oh, okay, you're kind of alright.
Yeah. And maybe this could have been the film.
Because I really don't like him in all the Superman. Yeah, so I don't know really. It's a good hypothesis.
Yeah. I don't know. But I do really like the bit near the beginning when Pentecost comes to get him. And he tries to go down this emotional monologue, and Pentecost just tells him to shut up. I don't have time for your emotional crap. The world's coming to an end. Get back in the giant robot, or leave me alone.
The voice of reason, truly, Sacker Pentecost.
Yeah, he just doesn't take any crap from anyone.
No, not at all. He don't have time for this.
Which is
it's
standard
true.
Idris Elba type character, really, but
extremely. You know what I really enjoy about Stacker Pentecost's character? I just love that he has Idris Elba's East London accent.
Yeah.
I love it. He just sounds like he's from Hackney. Because he is. Because he is from Hackney. Yeah. Well, because he says things like, he's the last man standing. No G's, even though he's a military man, he doesn't, it's just such an interesting, where did you come from? And why? We learn a little bit actually in, Tales from Year Zero, the comic book, that his sister, used to, fight she was in the U.S. Air Force. Or in the British Air Force, rather. The British Air Force. And, they sent fighter jets to support the attack in San Francisco. And she died in that first Jew attack in San Francisco. And so he carries that, this war is personal to him type of thing. Which, we don't really get to see in the film. And I suppose it's not necessary. He's just like a fixture. We need a leader, so he is it. But he does have a more kind of personal vendetta with the kaijus as well.
Yeah. Well, his key thing is getting over his overprotectiveness, isn't it? Yeah. It's about letting Mako go outside in effect, because I guess he's afraid that he'll lose her. To say nothing about the son that he apparently has in the sequel.
I know. I keep wondering about this. Okay, in the context of the first film, where's John Boyega here?
Yeah.
Did he, at what point?
Well, it could be his nephew. We don't know, I suppose.
Oh, perhaps. No, but I think the trailer does insinuate. I think they say something about his dad, and then they show Stacker. So it's like, okay, so if you are his son, like, when were you born? Did you know Mako? Like, all of this, like, what is happening? I need answers. I don't know that we're going to get them from the second film. Mm-hmm. Exactly. How old was he when Pacific Rim was taking place, you know?
Yeah.
Million dollar questions here. I'm not sure how many, like, answers we'll get, to be honest, but...
I've no idea. Yeah, it's a difficult one. But for the context of this film, I mean, the thing is, what they do in a film we haven't seen yet is immaterial. In the context of this one, his parental relationship is with Mako, and it's all about being less overprotective of her, letting her realise her full potential, and just generally trying to keep everyone from beating the crap out of each other. I suppose that's another thing he's trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tensions on that base, for sure.
I do like his attitudes to things as well. It's kind of, where'd you get a nuke? It's like, the Russians, they gave it to us. You know, I look the other way. He looks the other way when Hannibal Chow is taking apart Jaeger kaiju remains to sell in the black market because it gives him access to stuff he needs as well. So it's, and his only justification is last days of war. Like, that's it. It's like, I don't care. It's either this or the world ends. I'm happy with compromising a little bit. And it's a kind of very real and very... real. That's the only word I can think of. It's a very real attitude to dealing with a problem like that. It's like, protocol, don't need that.
Yeah, at this point, like, what's the takeaway here? Like, if we can, get these people to... allow these people to take what they want and do what they want with it, like, if it helps me, then fine. And I do like that. And
if he successfully puts them out of business anyway, so...
That's true.
He wins. It's a long game he's playing. That's what you say to his superiors. Yeah, he's a really good character. Just he has one of the best speeches since Independence Day as well.
Today we are cancelling the apocalypse.
Which was unfortunately annoying before the film came out because it was in all the trailers.
In all the trailers, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't give us the speech up front. Like, we want to hear that right away. Yeah. We want to hear that in the moment. But, and they give us most of it as well in the trailer, I think.
It's true. I think they, like, because it is truly, like, the one kind of massively, like, inspiring moment. The rest of it is just, like there's build-up and there's a lot of, like, quiet emotional scenes and there's a lot of, it's not very trailer-worthy, a lot of it. And so, like, I get from their point of view, like, we want the coolest moment, and that is, pretty much one of the coolest moments. So, fair that they, made it a centerpiece of the trailer. But also, it does give away the coolest moments, so, yeah.
Yeah, although I think there's a lot of cool moments, but unfortunately it gives you... To put it in a trailer would give away a lot of the kind of visual awesomeness. And I suppose you do see a lot of it, although I barely remembered the trailer when I went in. It was kind of something I'd seen once, but... while I'm sitting in the cinema trying to ignore trailers, I couldn't help but hear the speech. So, that's it. But there's a lot of cool moments in here. I mean, very early on, I love that. Like, I love that whole opening sequence where you see Riley and is it U.N.C.L.E?
U.N.C.L.E, the brother.
Yeah, going into action. I think that's like it just sets up the routine, which I always like these kind of seeing how these everyday things come together. So it's like,
exactly. Like, for them, it's normal.
Yeah, we're suiting up. We'll get into the cockpit. We'll have a bit of banter. We've done this a few times. We're not that worried about it, and you just know that because it's in the film, it's going to go to, it's going to go
badly
wrong. Yeah. Because you can't start the film off with it. Yeah, that was fine. That was just a routine mission. Back we go. Because something has to happen, and then it just goes horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And then you've that really cool shot on the beach, with the snow and stuff. That's just awesome.
Yeah, like that's one of my favorite, like, really great moments of the film. Like, because there's a grandpa and a kid on the beach with a metal detector, and like in comes this giant metal machine from the ocean. And it's this idea, like there's a lot of scenes in the film that play with the notion of tiny and giant things, and kind of the in a comedic sort of way sometimes. When one of the, I think Gypsy Danger crashes into a building and like knocks over a chair that hits a metal pendulum, and then like the little metal balls on a desk like start.
Yeah, the Newton's cradle.
So yeah, thank you. It's like that's awesome. Or when like it skids over, like they're at the harbor and Gypsy Danger skids and knocks over like a bollard and a pigeon flies away.
Yeah.
Just like these little games of like tiny things being affected by giant things in really subtle ways. Like those are cool moments. And also, I really like that one line of Chuck Hansen when he goes, "I'm gonna drop you like a sack of kaiju and just puts his hat on." Like, it's awesome. It's such a great line.
He is my least favorite character, though.
Man, like, I wish we got a little bit more of him, because what we learn about his upbringing and his family and how they lost they lost the mother, and so why it's just like the father and son, and that tension between them that just like won't go away. I think that if we got to know him a little more as a character, like a little more as a person, he'd be more likable. But he is definitely painted as the antagonist for a lot of it.
Yeah, and until he isn't, it's never really resolved. It just stops.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was maybe cut down on because after they cast him, they realised how terrible his accent was.
No. Why? Was it that bad? I can't tell. I'm Greek.
I thought it was.
Okay.
It's
so
very,
what's he supposed to be? Is he supposed to be Australian?
He's supposed to be Australian, yeah.
Right.
But the actor is English.
Yeah.
He was in EastEnders, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I only know him from Warcraft, but
I've never seen him in EastEnders, but I was told on good authority he was in EastEnders, and I was like, all right, okay. Why is he here?
A lot of people have been in EastEnders. I just know that he's a super nerd, and just really liked. I think he gave up another project to be in Pacific Rim. Because he really wanted to be in it. And I don't know, like I really respect him. Accents or no, I mean I have to like admit to like accents being a very weird thing for me. Like I don't really understand the subtle differences, and especially like what makes an accent good or not good. Not really sure. I kind of felt that, on that note, that Charlie Hunnam's accent was terrible because I could never tell where he was from. Like, not even a little bit.
Just speaking like he normally speaks, I think. Which is very, yeah.
Is that his normal accent? Because, like, a lot of it sounds
so.
like vaguely American, but then not. So it's like, what are you even? Like, where are you from?
I was impressed the actor playing his brother looks a lot like him, though.
That's true, yes.
Yeah, I don't know who the actor
really
was. Let's find out. It maybe is his brother. We'll just get you in for a scene or two.
Yeah, like I was just watching the beginning of the film earlier, and they really, really look alike.
Yeah. And it kind of seems like, oh, this is a film we're going to be seeing. This is, these two fighting monsters.
Yeah, and then he dies. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Where's he from?
No, it's not his brother.
No. Oh, he's Canadian. Interesting.
Yeah. Just looks a bit like him. Or certainly made up to look a bit like him.
Okay, but what's interesting
he's in
is
After
that
Earth as well, poor guy.
Oh no. What's interesting is that if you type in Yancey Beckett to Google, there's another actor who plays him in Pacific Rim Uprising.
Oh God.
So why did they recast? What is going on, sequel? I am concerned. I'm very concerned. I'm so concerned. Craig, I'm not.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll see it. I think at worst it'll be kind of fun.
Of course I'll see it.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. I mean, for Boyega, really, because I really like him. And I'm sure that he's going to do a great job in it. Now, the story and what they are going to do with a lot of, like the elements of the original film that I really enjoy, are they going to expand on them? Are they just going to, like, ignore a lot of stuff and just build this new thing out of nothing? Like, I'm not sure. Yeah.
I wonder what caused the change in direction for the sequel as well, because at one point it was like, it's done well in China, so that's great. So that gets us a sequel, and then it's Del Toro's going to make it, and it was almost this: we're going to make this, so you can either make it or we will. And he was like, "Fine, I'll make it." And then there was chat about an animated series that was going to tie into it, and comics, and this whole kind of interconnected universe that probably wouldn't have been that interconnected. It was, the advertising for these things is always more impressive than the end result, with the exception of the MCU. But most of the time it's like, oh yeah, they've mentioned this one thing in this comic that has nothing to, that happened in this film, or they'll make an oblique reference to something that happened in a comic in dialogue in the film, and then that'll be it.
Yeah, so I think it was so Travis Beacham, who wrote the original concept for Pacific Rim, he's the one who's like responsible for most of this story, and for most of the character building and stuff.
Yeah.
And then he and Del Toro like developed, the full kind of mythology of the story, and then obviously Del Toro directed it. So he was working on a sequel script along with the comic book and the animated series concept. And then things were just stalled for a very long time, and Beacham wanted to do like different projects. He wanted to make his own stuff. And so at some point, because of how long this was taking, he was like, all right, like, you guys can take this and do whatever, I guess. Like, I made my movie. My movie is the first one. So, like, anything else that you make, like, it's fine. And then, because I was waiting for a sequel so badly. I just wanted it. And I remember when Del Toro pulled back, because they were just like messing them about, really. Like, it's greenlit. Oh no, wait, there's no money. Or, like, we're not sure if we want it right now. Like, is this the right time? And so at some point Del Toro was like, all right, like, you guys, I have my own stuff to make, so bye. Which is fair enough. And that's the cruel truth of, like, the movie world as a business. The fact that a lot of it is up to, like, the head honchos who are, bankrolling the thing. Yeah. And if the bank doesn't come in time, like, some people are busy, or they don't want to wait around for studio execs to decide, yeah, sure, you can make your movie now. Like, actually, like, I have better things to do. And, case in point, he did his own thing, won himself an Oscar or two. So, he's doing okay. It's disappointing that things have turned out this way. I was really hoping that at least Beacham would remain tethered to the project, because it is his baby.
Yeah.
It was, his story from the get-go. He did get to do, like, the two comic books, and the novelization was given to somebody else to do, but it was based on his script. So, like, the essentials of what makes this world what it is, they are out there if people want to look into them. And I recommend the comic books wholeheartedly. They're a lot of fun. And if you like the world of Pacific Rim, like, they'll give you a lot of insight as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, well, maybe check them out. Although it's when the sequel contradicts everything that we've seen, and then it becomes the new normal.
Do you know one detail from the novelization of the film, which I am curious as to why they didn't go with it? So Newt and Herman, the two scientists, they are both German.
Hence the names.
Yes, but then Newt has an American accent, and Herman has a British accent, and they just kind of, like, roll with that.
Yeah.
The film explains away Newt's accent, not the film, sorry, the book, by saying that he went to MIT as, like, a kid, and he's been living in America for some time, and so, you know, his accent sounds like this, which, sure, I suppose. But then for Herman, like, nothing. He's really supposed to have a German accent. He's, you know, been in Germany until very shortly before the film story begins.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, like, it's just, like, some details like that where I'm like, Or, you know, the fact that Herman is married and has, like, a wife somewhere. You know, it's just like he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy, like in the film, you know, film Herman doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who, like, desires human company.
Yeah, the film version very much lives in his own head and kind of despises speaking to other people.
Exactly. And so, you know, like, the detail that he is married and his wife is, you know, worried about him, and, you know, she always calls the base, and I'm like, oh wow, really? This guy? The guy who hates, like, human contact? Like, I'm surprised, actually. Impressed, really.
Well, it's in the film he has that kind of mini arc where he does learn to
be friends?
Someone else in his head.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. It's like, literally, probably unfortunately for him, but he goes from this, you know, I don't care, I'm just going to sit here and do sums. You worry about fighting the monsters, I'll do the sums, and then later on he's being an active participant and finding out more. Well, that's only after he thinks that he's wrong. Yeah, so I suppose there's a kind of an element of pride at play because he's never been wrong before, maybe.
Oh, 100%, yes. Yeah, I think so. But I do like him more for, you know, coming out of his shell and, like, accepting that Newt might be right and, you know, deciding to help him, actually being friends. Like, it's a nice moment in the film. Yeah.
And I liked Newt. I think they could have done a bit more with his drifting with the kaiju thing, because it kind of only exists so that he can go into Hong Kong and then meet Hannibal Chow and then go on to figure out how to get through the rift. But there's kind of a lot more that could have been done with that. I mean, what does that do to your mental state, being mind melding with a giant beast?
Yeah.
And Del Toro himself said that for the sequel he would consider him to be the villain. You know, but whenever he talked about what are your ideas for the sequels, and he's like, I've got millions of them, and he would just rattle off a few. And then it's like, I don't know, I'll make one of these, and then he doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder which way they're taking it, because Newt and Herman are both in the sequel. So I wonder if we might see some of those effects of the mind melding and what that might have done to both of them, if anything has actually happened to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because it's a really cool idea, and you know, if you freeze frame the mind meld moments, you see some really cool imagery there, from his backstory a bit to, you know, an insight into the other world. I mean, it's just flashes of images, but it's clearly there to, you know, when people buy the Blu-ray, they can sit there and freeze frame it and watch it frame by frame and see stuff.
I mean, I don't know that anything is built with that in mind. I hesitate to say, oh yeah, sure, you know, like those. It's interesting. Like, while you watch the film, like, you notice these things, and instantly you gain a sense of who this guy is or what has happened to him. Like that bullying scene in one of the flashbacks, or Newt getting his tattoo, you know, just like bits and bobs here and there. I don't know that, you know, they made it for the nerds to screen cap later.
Well, I mean, thinking Del Toro is a detail-oriented guy, I would think that he would have wanted, at least, we're going to have a bit of a narrative to these quick flashes, so they're not just like random imagery from this guy's life. So it's kind of, if you do freeze frame it, it's actually quite interesting, because you get to see little bits. I mean, it goes by in the blink of an eye. Otherwise,
it is quite fast.
Yeah, so you kind of can't pick up anything from it, really, unless you're really absurdly paying attention at that point. But yeah, I did the freeze frame, you know, frame by frame, just to watch it, and you get to see a bit of Herman's past as well in the other one. You know, Mostly it's him writing on blackboards and stuff, but or whiteboards or whatever. He's writing on stuff, and it's kind of his obsession with numbers.
So much science, yes.
Yeah, because he understands numbers and doesn't understand people. Yeah, but they're quite good little nerdy scientist characters, and I like Newt's fascination with the kaiju, and that he's a bit of a
kaiju groupie.
Yeah, a groupie. Yeah, but he has the tattoo, and I think one of them's the tattoo that killed Riley's brother, isn't it?
No, it's so he has a tattoo of one of the ones that Riley and his brother took down.
Yeah, it just looks like it has a kind of knife head.
No, he doesn't have knife head on. He has I forget the name of the code name. Yamarachi. So he has a Japanese code name.
Yeah.
And Riley notices it in the lift scene, and he says, my brother took him down in
2017.
2017 or something like that. Yeah.
Must have missed that year.
Yeah. and then Newt says, he was 2,500 tons of awesome. And then just like collectively everybody looks at him like, what the hell, dude? Like, you didn't just say that. And he's like, or terrible, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
I do like that fascination, I think, is what makes him a scientist. Like, that idea that the kaiju are awesome and worth studying to the extent of mind melding with one and finding out, like, something directly from their brain. Like, that's... peak scientific curiosity. It doesn't get more science-y than that, I don't think.
Yeah. And then he's a bit of a fanboy as well, which ties back into the whole, there was this whole culture that grew up out of the attacks. You see the people in felt suits just punching each other on talk shows and things like that. So it's that, there's an entire source of fandom built up around these. People have found entertainment in it, which is, again, very human. It's really horrible, but let's find a way to laugh at it a couple of years later.
Yeah, it's that bit in the prologue that says that monsters became toys.
Yeah.
And the one, like, foamy, like, kaiju on a Japanese talk show, like, being silly. Like, it's just, such a human thing. Like, we do that.
Yeah. And then when you see it in Hong Kong, how there's like shanty towns growing up around kaiju remains as well, that's really cool. There's like they're using like the rib cage and stuff as a, I don't know if it's actually a dwelling, but it's definitely like a decorative thing.
Yes.
So there's this entire change in culture because of it, and it would be because it is persistent. I guess it's every 6 months, or something like, or every 3 months or something like that. They do give you the figure. I can't remember what it is. When it first started,
well,
it was like 24 weeks or something.
Yeah, so it's incremental. So it's I forget the sciencey word that Herman uses, but basically every attack is in a shorter and shorter space of time. Like the space between attacks is shorter and shorter. Like it starts off with 6 months, then like shorter than that, and by the end of the film, like they are expecting a double event within a week.
Yeah. And then a triple event.
Yeah. So, yeah, like it's a very natural kind of progression of things, like for humans to kind of assimilate this into their new normal. Yeah. And that's, to circle back to like the idea of fantastic world building, really believable, real, elements of culture, because that's what humans do. Like, it's not a far cry for us to believe that we would do this if there were giant monsters invading Earth and, if we were fighting them with giant robots like that. Yeah.
And even the classification system, it kind of sanitizes it a little bit.
It does.
It's okay. There's a giant monster attacking. It's pretty horrible, but it's category 3, so it's nothing we haven't dealt with before, or whatever category they happen to be. So it's okay. We'll send out a Jaeger. It'll be dealt with. Just don't go outside. You'll be fine. It's like the same as a hurricane. We know how to deal with this sort of. It's fine. Just try not to panic.
Yeah.
It's all about keeping people less afraid, and then they decide to build giant walls because that's a great idea.
I mean, I guess that's something that bothers me about like the first Pacific Rim film. Like when they decide to discontinue the Jaeger program, instead of pouring in support, because obviously it's the only defense tactic that works.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that a massive kaiju won't come along that is so big that, the wall will be nothing to it. And eventually one does come along, and it does that. And it's like, well, what did you think was going to happen? The idea that, we can't really afford to, blah, blah, we're just gonna build a wall. And it's like, I mean, do you want to die? Like, how did you justify this decision? It does feel a little bit of a manufactured kind of crisis point.
Yeah. Although it wouldn't be the first set of world leaders to make a really stupid decision on the back of a crisis. So, it's believable in that sense.
Yeah, I guess so. You're right.
And the film immediately calls it out as a stupid idea. You've got the graffiti on the sign, completion date, never. And you get the sense that people are only there because that's the only work they can get. So they're, building this thing that they don't really believe in, but they've got to eat, and it's the only work going.
Yeah.
So there's that part of it as well. So it's kind of the economic effect, I suppose. I mean, you don't get a sense of what it's done to big business and stuff. You know that there's no, international tension. Everyone in the world gets along and builds giant robots together, but... other than that, you don't really know what happens to the world economy. And, I'm not that interested to find out, because that's a scene I don't need to see. It's Phantom Menace style, people sitting there talking about budgets and trade negotiations and all that. Yeah, you don't need that. You just need to know that, there's something to defend. And it feels like there is a world out there to defend. At least.
Yeah. There's a moment in the film whenever Raleigh is about to sort of relaunch into Gypsy Danger, and there's a moment on TV where the American leader says, we've moved everybody inland 300 miles, we're safe. And somebody says, for the rich and powerful, but what about the rest of us?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a side of this conflict that, I would love to see more of. The idea of what happens to the little people, what happens to, the people who aren't rich and powerful enough to guarantee a move inland. Is there... what cultural shift happens to the cities and towns that can't afford to be moved, and so they just stay on the coast and hope that they won't get attacked.
Yeah.
That's a very, again, real kind of human thing, and that's interesting to me than, the one scene of the leader saying, well, that's it, we're packing up and leaving. I want to see what happens to people. And maybe we'll see more of that in the sequel, maybe not.
Maybe, yeah. No idea what the sequel's bringing. Absolutely no idea. Because this film, it almost doesn't need a sequel because it resolves itself.
Exactly. I mean, it's the
fixed.
end of the war. Yeah. I was always hoping that if they were going to do another film, we were going to have a look into, either the first attack or at any point during the war. You have 15 years worth of battles with kaiju and, characters we haven't met, or perhaps characters we have met. A younger Stacker, a younger Mako.
You could do that. Or maybe when there's no, unifying threat to deal with, humans start fighting each other again, and then you get the, Jaegers fighting Jaegers conceit, which I'm sure will be in there. I mean, I don't imagine they'll do a sequel and decide not to. We'll see the robots fighting each other for some reason. But you could almost do that, bring back the international tension thing, because, it's fine that they're working together against a single threat, but once that threat's gone, has everything really went away? Probably not. World peace is kind of, or at least in the world we live in, feels unrealistic. So I can understand that countries will work together when there's a necessity, but maybe there's different agendas at play once that necessity's gone.
Yeah, possibly. And that could be an interesting story in and of itself. I don't know that, the majority of film goers who go to see films like Pacific Rim would enjoy a downtime kind of story. I definitely would. Yeah.
That's why you have Jaeger fighting each other.
There's a lot to say.
That's why you do that.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, have them possess or resurrect a kaiju from using mad science. I don't know. You could do plenty of things.
There's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think from what I know about the sequel, it's just the rift opens again, and stuff comes through, and they have to fight again.
I've heard something about kaijus that also wear mech elements.
Of course there is.
And I think there's a moment in the trailer that says, they couldn't have opened the rift from there. Somebody let them in from our world.
All right.
And it cuts to this Asian lady who looks sinister because she has eyebrows that are perfect. So I don't know what the deal is. I'm very skeptical because the trailer looks like the kind of movie that you think the first one would have been, and then the first one turned out to actually be a lot deeper than the surface would allow you to believe.
Yeah.
That being said, that's also how I personally felt about the trailer for the first film.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that, here's this vapid, mecha blockbuster nonsense, is this Transformers again? I kind of don't care,
That's the one clip I have seen. It's the panning shot of them all cocking their weapons.
Yeah.
And it's that's just straight out of Transformers.
Right? It's do we need this? There's 4 or 5 Transformer movies now.
Yeah.
we stop it. If we wanted another Transformers movie, then that's what you'd be making,
And they're apparently more agile in the footage from the second one as well, which is one of the things I really liked about this one. They move like machines.
Yeah, they're rust buckets, yes.
Yeah, very deliberate, very lumbering. They're massive things, and they can't do somersaults.
Mm-hmm. And especially the way that they move in the sea.
Yeah.
Or when, Gypsy Danger is running through Hong Kong, and it's slow to move and to react because it's a machine. It's the size of it impedes movement as quickly. It's not human sized. And yeah, they definitely paid a lot of attention to the size of things and how realistically they would move. And I do agree they look more limber in the trailer for the new film.
Yeah, and there's got to be some element of delay between them thinking about doing something, or they mime it as well. But there's got to be, fractions of a second maybe, but there will be a delay between them doing that and then the robot responding. Because you see that a couple of times where, the whole check for a pulse moment, Raleigh turns round, and then the next shot is Gypsy turning round. But then, obviously it could just be editing, but I get the impression that doesn't happen till after he does that. Because it wouldn't be one-to-one, real-time communication, would it? Because you are piloting a machine at the end of the day, and it has to respond to your movement, which will take time because it has to recognise what that movement is before it responds to it.
Yeah.
So that's all. I mean, that's all fine. If they abandon that in the sequel, then will just be Transformers.
Yeah, I'm gonna go in, with a very skeptical mind. I am worried that it's going to be the vapid kind of destruction-filled mecha nonsense that a lot of people who haven't seen the first one, describe the first one as. Or people who don't like it, which, hey, fair enough. You don't like
It's not for everyone.
you don't like what the story is. It's okay. It's fine. We can agree to disagree. I think there's a lot of heart to the first Pacific Rim film. There's a lot of, human vulnerability, that really lends itself to, just making this massive, completely unrealistic, 100% silly concept. It kind of makes it feel, sad and tragic at times. It has such emotional depth, I think. There's a lot to unpack in a lot of the characters that, maybe not at first glance. Maybe, you have to see the film a couple of times. But the performances are really good. The script, it's for what this film, started out as conceptually. It's I don't know. I think it's really deep, actually, and well formed and well written.
Yeah, and I think the emotional heart of it comes from Mako and what she kind of goes through. When she finally gets into a Jaeger, it's kind of Pentecost's fears are confirmed because she can't handle it. And the first, it's in the subtext, but it feels like he thinks as soon as she goes into the drift, this is what she's going to latch onto, and it's going to prove it. It's going to make her really ineffective. And what happens is she almost kills everyone, because she remembers being that scared little girl, and it's like, what if I had a weapon that could stop this thing? And then she's actually in a weapon that could stop this thing. But obviously it's a memory and it's not actually there.
Yeah.
So there is that. That idea that this is exactly what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
And she kind of has to overcome that, although she does that because, we've got no one else. You might as well. You just have to go. Either that or everyone dies anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that it comes to that, because if that connection had worked perfectly the first time round, we wouldn't really have a story.
There's no point in the scene.
The whole idea, exactly, yeah, and the whole idea is that, he's been protecting her for so long. Yes, she's done well in simulations, but that doesn't mean she'll do well in the real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and facing that challenge is important for her as well.
Yeah, because the first thing she does is she latches on to her worst memory, just being that little girl running away from a monster. But then, and I like that you see the other side of that memory as well, the positive side of it. The point where she gets rescued. That's it's obviously really pivotal, and it's almost like she ignores that, but Riley sees it and she doesn't, or she chooses not to remember that part. So. Again, there's a lot there, and I remember when I saw the first trailer, I was thinking, that's where the depth's coming in. It's with that, that mind melding stuff, and it kind of is, although they don't do enough with it. It's kind of at the start. It's like, okay, what does it mean for someone who experiences someone else's death as they experience it, and then go on living, and that's interesting. And then you've got the Mako's freak out, where she relives her memory, and then that's really it. There isn't anything else. You've got the bit where Stacker says, I'll be able to drift through you just fine because I know I understand exactly who you are and it's not a problem for me.
Yeah. At that point, I don't know that drift compatibility is much of the worry that they have. They're the two only people left, pretty much. Yeah. And it's like, all right, like we've got to pilot this thing. It'll be okay, I guess. You know, because like I refuse to believe that Stacker Pentecost and Chuck Hansen are drift compatible. I don't think so.
Well, all
I
they do
really
is
don't
argue
think so.
when they're in the thing as well. So yeah,
Exactly.
it proves
So
itself.
you know, at that point, it's just and it's only really about moving this machine to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, less about fighting and being in sync with each other.
Yeah, and that underwater
and
sequence
that,
is by far the least impressive as well.
I guess so.
I mean, compared to what you just had with the big Hong Kong battle, after that it's that is the hook, and then after that it's just well, everything
Yeah, it's
after
true.
they go
I
into
mean,
the rift
the
is fun.
Hong Kong scene. Yeah, the Hong Kong scene is the highest kind of. It is the climax. It is the point at which we feel that it's the absolute worst, set of circumstances. It couldn't possibly get any worse.
Yeah.
Like at the point where they get to the rift, it's like okay, like they have to find a way out of this now. Like it's got to resolve itself. But the Hong Kong scene, yeah, for sure, like, yeah, it goes much worse for them than they anticipate.
Yeah, it's like when a Category 5 shows up, it's not that big a deal, because all they do is jump into it, and then it's dealt with. That's it's like, oh well, we were building up to that, and that was kind of rubbish. Those Category 4s, they were more formidable. Yeah, I love the Hong Kong scene, especially seeing the other Jaegers in action, albeit briefly, when they all just get decimated.
I know, it's devastating. I have a lot of feelings about the side characters that we never get to know. The Russians, the married couple, the Russians, and the Chinese triplets. Like their stories and their fighting techniques and their culture and what it means to be a part of this like international team of defense. Like it's just so cool to see a film, to see a blockbuster, because that doesn't really happen ever, I don't think, to have a blockbuster where it is truly an international effort. The only Americans there is Raleigh, presumably. I'm guessing he's meant to be American. I don't know.
So. Yeah.
And then like, I guess Newt a little bit, even though he's German, but he's grown up in the U.S. And then like everybody's from everywhere else. We've got Marco from Japan, the Chinese kids, the Russians, the Australians. One British guy for some reason, even though Britain is decidedly not on the Pacific Rim, but sure, we'll have the English guy because he has a great commanding presence. Okay, stop asking questions.
We'll have the English guy because we asked Idris Elba and he said yes, and we didn't.
And he said yes, and he's awesome. So we're gonna let him talk with his own accent because he is badass. But yeah, I love how like international it is, how well balanced that is, and even how the different the approach is coming in from like a non-American perspective.
Yeah, and you don't see much of that, but you get a kind of sense of it. You certainly get the impression that they've been working together a long time, at least. They know how to use their machines.
Yes.
You don't get much more than that because they don't last that long. But the whole idea is they come up against something that they don't expect. The acid, for instance, that's quite a surprise, and it just burns through the Jaeger, and that's the end of them. And then I forget what happened to I can't even remember the name of the one. The triplets. I think they just get whacked by the tail or something like that, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just cool to see multiple stuff going on, and then you already get a sense of Striker Eureka and what that can do, so it doesn't participate in that fight, because you've already seen that. You saw it earlier in the film.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, with its chest missiles and stuff, which are just cool.
Although, yeah, like how many times can you use that? At some point you run out of missiles, and then what?
Well, I think it's just once, isn't it? Unless it's like a video game. We don't know where these come from. They're just lots of them. It's
Reload somehow. Yes.
Yeah, it's probably one of those kind of last ditch effort type things, but it's just like the plasma cannon. You get the impression that they're not supposed to use that unless it's really desperate.
Yeah.
Because they get told off for doing it at the start of the film. Despite the fact that they didn't kill anything, but it was that classic movie mistake of check that the bad guy is dead.
Yes.
And then Riley does learn from that, funnily enough. Because later on he just, let's just blow this thing into
Empty the
oblivion.
clip! Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that they forget about the sword,
one of the
though.
biggest... Exactly, I was going to say about the sword. Because one of the biggest kind of, pet peeves of a lot of people who see the film, one of the biggest kind of plot hole-y type criticisms is, oh, but why didn't they use the sword earlier? Why didn't they use the sword all the time? To which I have to say, the sword moment is one of the most anime moments in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the fighting style of Gypsy Danger changes when Mako becomes its pilot. Because when we see the first time that we see Gypsy Danger is Raleigh and his brother Yancey, and they kind of fight in quite a conventional kind of way. There's a lot of punching, there's a headlock, they don't really, and eventually they use the plasma cannon.
Yeah.
But when Raleigh and Mako do the first pilot test, the first stance that they assume, and here is the first difference, in Yancey and Raleigh would do like this fist slams into open palm kind of thing as an opening gesture. Like holding, I'm obviously I'm mimicking this, but I realize that our listeners at home cannot see what I'm doing. Can't see what I'm doing because we're not on video chat. So yeah, sorry guys. And then when Mako comes on as a co-pilot, the first stance that they assume is like a karate pose of one arm is kind of extended, the other one closer to the chest. As an opening kind of gesture, they do that, which is, distinctly a more Asian, martial arts move. And then later, when they fight, they move differently to how Raleigh used to with his brother. And then when the sword comes out, it's at this point, maybe she installed it, she has been in charge of repairing Gypsy and all the other Mark IIIs. Maybe she put it on,
Yeah, and Raleigh didn't read the instruction manual before going out. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who reads instruction manuals.
I always got the impression that I got the impression that he and his brother would win just out of kind of dumb luck almost. Let's just keep punching this thing until it dies. And then
100%, yes.
Yeah, and then, but when Mako's there, the first thing they do is they dodge the acid, and then they rip out the acid gland. So it's there's a bit of tactics going on here. So they're actually, or she's at least thinking about what they're doing, even if he isn't. So there is, there's definitely that kind of alteration in the fighting style, and that's quite cool to see and it's good that you get that opening bit because it gives you that, drift compatibility. Does mean that there will be differences if there's different people in the same machine. It's not like, the tactics aren't always the same. Exactly,
yeah, that it does depend on the pilots. It's one of the lines in the prologue when Raleigh says, that a Jaeger is only as good as its pilots.
Yeah, I think Chuck Hansen says that at some point as well. He says something about the Jaeger program ended because of mediocre pilots. which is just him being like, I'm the best and you all suck. But there's an element of truth to that, at least.
For sure, yeah.
And of course, the sword bit, the real answer to why did they wait until then is it's because it's cool. And
also that.
dangling
I don't
above
like...
the earth. And the one way out of it is to cut it with a sword. It's just
hell
cool.
Yeah. I don't know that, it's something that a hero would think, like, in the heat of battle.
Yeah.
But, certainly narratively and,
visually,
this is, visually, it is cool, it is interesting, and you wouldn't just whip that out from the first scene, because then it wouldn't be cool when that happened. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it was just at that point where it's like, oh, now they can fly, this is amazing, and and oh, look, they're giving birth for some reason. That's that'll help us later, and that leads to a bit of a funny moment with Hannibal Chow, where he's like, look at this, look how well I know how these things work. I knew it was going to suffocate because its lungs weren't formed or something. And then it gets eaten. It's almost the Deep Blue Sea moment, but it's not quite as good, but it's the Deep Blue Sea moment. They keep trying to replicate that in certain things. And there's, of course, the post-credit scene that reveals that Hannibal Chow is alive.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he's in the sequel. I think he's just there because he's in all of Del Toro's things.
Yeah, I don't think that post-credit scene was meant as a link to something else.
No, it's just funny.
It's a very Marvel kind of concept. The post-credit scene is important because it will give you a clue. And even Marvel have taken to, like, in their last 3 films, they have decidedly, like, removed that, like, one of the post-credit scenes might be a link to one of the next films, but then the other post-credit scene will just be funny.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I like that, the Pacific Rim post-credit scene is just, were you wondering what happened to Ron Perlman? Or here's what happened to him.
Yeah. It reminded me of the Hellboy post-credit scene, actually, where it's, I forget his name, but Jeffrey Tambor's character is just left in the place they were at the end. It's because, it's one thing you might not notice when you're watching the film, but they leave and he isn't there. And then it turns out they forgot him or just didn't bother about him. But, obviously, it's not a link into the sequel, and it doesn't even get mentioned in the sequel. It's just funny. And it kind of rewards people a little bit who decided to stay. I actually didn't know the Hellboy one existed until years later. Because, I saw it in the cinema once and then left. And then,
I see, yeah.
In this one, it comes after the animated credits,
yes.
which I usually will sit through because they look cool.
Yeah.
I'll confess, the list of names, unless it's like a Marvel film, I won't.
Well, I don't know. I personally, and this is a weird thing I do because, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, I'm Greek, and so I always sit through the credits and I look through Greek names in the credits. And then I cheer the Greek names, and I'm like, hell yeah, George Papadopoulos, you go, first accountant. There's usually Greek people in the accountant part of the production for some reason. I don't know that we're necessarily better at math, but, it just so happens. Or, there might be some people working in visual effects or, any part of the production, really, I'm just always there scanning for Greek names. But that's just a thing, like a habit I've built over years and years of just going to see films and, wanting to see Greek people, like, succeed in the world of films. Because, it's a small country. We don't really have, like, much of an industry, really. And so just seeing Greek people make it is like, yes! You did it. And so, yeah. But obviously in the last sort of 10 years with Marvel, like, I'm just like, especially if it's a Marvel movie, like, you gotta stay till the end.
Yeah.
And I'm always, flabbergasted at people getting up and leaving the minute that the screen goes dark, because it's a Marvel movie. There's going to be 2 post-credit scenes. We know this. Until the lights go up, I'm not leaving my seat. I don't know where you are going. So yeah, like it's a funny thing. But I'm glad that the Pacific Rim thing, like it was, I think, made as a very standalone film. I don't read any of the ending, as intending to make another film.
No.
And sometimes that's okay. We love getting sequels of the stuff that we like. And I'm always a proponent of, is this an original thing? Can we get more of this original thing? Amazing. Yes, let's do it. But not as a rule. Like, I don't think that it's necessary, hey, we got a good film, we have to make another one.
Yeah. I don't,
if
I
the
don't
story,
think that's necessary either.
Yeah, like if the story doesn't call for another one, then it's okay. Like, you got one good film. Maybe go out, find some more cool original stuff, make another cool new original thing. Like, people love this stuff. Of course we do.
Well, judging by the box office, certainly the domestic box office for it, people don't love that stuff, because that was the sticking point on the sequel, wasn't it? It didn't make enough money to be a priority.
Oh.
But, it only turned a profit really when it hit China, I think, because they, that boosted it to its kind of well above its budget sort of thing. But it's just one of those things, and maybe it will be better without a sequel. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the sequel's going to be. It could be amazing. It could just be a really terrible marketing.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be the first time.
True.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to The Grey, for instance, that Liam Neeson film.
Oh, yes.
The marketing for that is for a different film. You could almost get it sued for false advertising at this rate. So it could just be badly marketed, and I hope it is, because I do want to see more of this world, and I'm interested to see what they could do with a sequel. Although maybe I'd be more interested in an animated series, because...
Yeah, I think it would make an excellent animated series. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then you can tell those like little insular stories, the smaller things, the problem of the week type thing, and it doesn't have to be huge, and you don't have to have Transformers style visuals and all that stuff. And I think that's fine. But again, the sequel's out in 2 weeks? Might be good. I don't know. I'm sure it'll be at least fun in places.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll enjoy at least some of it. I don't expect to hate all of it, but I am going in with, immense amounts of love for the original film, and I'm not sure that this will live up to it, and it's always a very difficult kind of position to be in, because we don't know what to expect, and I don't really know what I want out of this, to be quite honest. Like, I don't know what would make a good sequel.
Yeah.
So, keeping an open mind is essential, and as long as it's fun, I guess, shrug.
I compared it to Independence Day earlier with the speech, but it's almost a lot like Independence Day, as in they're making a sequel and no one can figure out why, because the first film is closed. And, I'm actually one of those people that would hold my hands up and say I don't mind the Independence Day sequel. I don't think it's great, but, at least they have a more charismatic son of main character from the previous film than that film did. Independence Day 2 really suffered from its lack of Will Smith, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think John Boyega will be a good follow-up to Idris Elba. Based on what I've seen of him so far. I haven't seen a lot of him, to be fair, but he seems like he's pretty good.
I really liked John Boyega in Star Wars, and I really liked him in Attack the Block as well. I think he definitely has action star chops, and this is the right kind of film for him to show that.
Yeah.
Being a London boy as well, he gets to, be a London man, like his fictional dad, Idris Elba, with his London accent in a Pacific setting, because
Yeah.
why not? Why not really is the essence of Pacific Rim. It's like, what would happen if this? Why? Why not? Why not build giant robots? Why not, like, punch them in the face until they die? Why not, hide a sword in the wrist of the robot? Like, yes, just yes. And it's the delicate balance of a film that is really silly, is really honest about it. Like at no point does it pretend to be a serious movie,
Yeah.
And yet it is serious about being silly.
Yeah.
Like it takes itself just seriously enough to kind of build this world that's really believable. But then the rest of it is just kind of, ridiculous action sequences that are enormously satisfying. And that's why it works. Peppered with actual character development and, great world building details. It's, that's what makes Pacific Rim good for me, I think.
Well, it takes the time to let you invest in those characters, so when they are out there fighting, it's not just, I don't know who this is. Mm-hmm. And to compare it to Transformers, I mean, I'm someone who doesn't mind the Transformers films, although I'm completely sick of them now, especially after the last one. Yeah. But I didn't, I was kind of, I wasn't defending them, but I was like, yeah, I understand that they're crap. I understand all these problems, but I also don't mind them to an extent. But in the fights in those ones, I can enjoy them for the empty spectacle that they are, or at least I used to be able to. But what will happen is there's a robot that I've maybe seen earlier once who's like killed, and I'm like, I have no idea who that was or why I should care. So it's metal just being destroyed. But at least I get the sense that there are people in this film that, when they die, it means something. So maybe not so much the other two teams, because you only see them when they're introduced. You don't see them again. And then they appear when they go out to fight. But then when you've got like Stacker and Chuck, when they're killed, that means something because you've seen them throughout the film. And then you have Herc in the background, and he has that kind of that look when he realises he's outlived his son, and that there's weight to that as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it does
exactly. There's a lot of little moments like that that really like make you, as you said, like they suck you into the humanity of it all. And I personally, I didn't expect any of that in a movie about giant robots and giant monsters.
No. And
I thought we were not going to get any of it, and instead we get a lot of it. So, yeah.
And I'm sure the technology could have existed, that they could have sat in a helicopter nearby and controlled the robot, but then they're not in the fight at that point. You need them to kind of be there. Yeah. It's like in the Marvel films, how Tony Stark could just remote control suits into combat every time, and they haven't really explained why he doesn't. But if he did that every time, then it would just be a hunk of metal that's getting destroyed, and that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, and every time that they do that in the Marvel films, it's just less and less like interesting. It's like, oh, okay, it's just empty suits again. Cool, nice. Yeah. Like there's no stakes, and you gotta have stakes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they could easily have done that with this film, but obviously you need that human element, so they need to be there. And if their robot gets destroyed, they're killed, and it's as simple as that. And they establish that very early on, how dangerous it is, because when Yancey gets pulled out from the cockpit, it's like, they're not safe in here. Mm-hmm. They have to be on their toes, they have to be paying attention, they have to be good at what they do, and these creatures are getting more used to killing them all the time. So it's, they're fighting a foe that learns and knows how to adapt to them, and it does build the stakes quite well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm actually immensely appreciative that they didn't do anything with because it did seem at one point like they were trying to build a bit of a love connection, and then they don't ever pull the pin on it.
Thank you. Yes, 100%. Internet high five from London for you, because oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is one of the biggest, like, selling points of the film for me. The fact that the Raleigh and Mako connection does not get romanticized. It is not necessarily a romance blooming between them. It might, you know, maybe it's just friendship. Maybe it's just like, hey, we just saved the world. Yay! All right, bye now. You know, like, it's never made into, like, this big romance that, you know, also he has to get the girl. Because most of these films have that. Yeah. But this one doesn't. It's about saving the world and saving the world only. And yeah, I completely agree with you. It's so good, and I appreciate it so much. Yes.
Although there are scenes early on where it suggests it might head that way. You know, there's like those kind of furtive glances between them. And,
oh yeah, and when she looks at him shirtless and she like blushes, it's really funny. Yeah, and maybe, you know, like I wouldn't mind if it happens after. You know, if it's something that, you know, they explore after they've saved the world. But, you know, within, you know, the narrative of the story, you know, like, there's no time to think about whether, you know, does he like me? Do I like her? Like, what's happening? Like, no, like, there's no time for this. The world is ending, you know?
Yeah.
And I like this. And also, doesn't that make any potential romance kind of stronger? You know, like, it starts off as this, like, great connection between them. They think alike. They are compatible, and, you know, whether that means a good relationship later, like, like, I really like that.
And they may never find out anyway, just because he isn't in the second one that I'm aware of.
I know, and that bothers me a little bit, because, like, a lot of the main characters are there. Stacker is not, because he has cancer and died in the rift and, like, all these things, so, like, he's gone, fine.
Yeah, he was blown to bits. He's pretty dead.
Yeah, I would hate to find out that Raleigh has died off camera between the films.
Will Smith style.
I am not a particular fan of that approach. It's I suppose, you know, it's the easiest one to explain a character's absence, but it's also lazy, and I don't like it. I hope that they do something else.
Yeah, because she's in it, isn't she?
She is, yes, and me and Herman are, and I'm not sure if Hannibal Chow is in it. I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they teased that Stacker would always be found in the drift, so maybe there'll be a cameo that we don't know about.
Ooh, that might be interesting.
Yeah, she can sort of commune with him. I don't know.
Yeah, in some her memory. Way. That might be interesting.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't know what they're gonna do, how they're gonna explain away Raleigh not being there. You know, if they do something silly, like he and Mako got together and then, you know, they got married, but then he died, and so here we are now. Like, ugh. You know, at that point, I'm gonna groan my way out of the cinema. Just like, right, I'm done. I know this has only been on for 2 minutes, but I'm not watching this.
He was pretty close to a nuclear explosion, so yeah.
I guess. I suppose. Maybe. I'm squinting, but you can't see me right now. But I am squinting.
And it could be, well, it might not be interesting, but there would be some kind of symmetry to the potential her father, in inverted commas, died of cancer, and so did her husband.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he didn't die of cancer, but he had cancer.
Yes.
And then, you know, he was atomized. He
almost died of cancer until he blew himself up. So
He was keeping the cancer at bay with fisherman friend sweets. That's all I could think of when he was taking them.
Now I can't unsee it. I hope he was minty fresh the whole film.
Ruined the film for you.
Yeah, just like, because I was watching bits of it before we started recording, and there is, you know, those ubiquitous scenes in the lifts where he takes out his little box and takes a pill, and now it'll just be like, well, minty fresh, Idris. It probably was mints.
Yeah. I don't get the logic behind the whole, in the first generation of Jaegers, we forgot about radiation shielding. It's like, it's quite a fundamental thing to forget.
Yeah. Really, of all the things to forget, that doesn't sound like, yeah.
I mean, as justification for having cancer, you don't really need to justify it. It's, I have cancer. It happens. It's fine. I mean, I suppose the point of view is to the kind of everything he's sacrificed is now is what is killing him. His obsession with the war, which isn't in the film really, is what ends up killing him because they cut corners and he's happy to do that. I can see what they might have been going for there, but ultimately, if they just said "I have cancer," it'd be like, right, whatever.
Well, yeah,
happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cancer happens even before Jaegers. Yes.
Yeah. It just happens, fine.
Yeah, it's a thing.
I can deal with that. Yeah. So, do you have anything else to say on the kind of expanded universe, or is there only those three things?
It's just those. There's a new novel that came out in 2016 called Tales from the Drift, and Beacham wrote that. So I think that was supposed to be the connecting animated series that never happened.
Right.
And then there is, I was looking at Amazon earlier, and there is a prequel novel to Uprising.
Okay.
Which is meant to bridge the gap between the first film and the second. Although I assume it's not necessary, obviously. Like, they're going to bridge that gap with the first 5 minutes. They're going to tell us what has happened. But maybe that might shed some more light into the world. I will read it. I think it would be cool. Yeah, I don't know how necessary it is, obviously, because I don't know what's in it, but yes. Yeah. So that's kind of everything.
Probably not hugely necessary.
No, I wouldn't think so. I mean, the none of it is, and none of it should be. I am a firm believer in, any necessary information, you put it in the film. I shouldn't have to, read companion books to understand or enjoy it. But the companion books are fun for those who want to, and perhaps they enrich, the film and its world.
Yeah.
I know that I'm extremely guilty of conflating all of the information that I know about Pacific Rim and kind of going, but isn't that in the film? And then it isn't. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. And it's okay, it's fine not to, get involved in the extended universe type stuff. But this one's one of the franchises that I'm actually really into, so I'm gonna get that prequel book and Tales from the Drift, and I'll update you on how it is.
on how worthwhile it is.
Yeah.
I'm a bit like that with comic book movies or comic book stuff in general, especially on TV as well. I'll find that my mind fills in the gaps because I know how they did it in the comics, and then I'll talk to someone that has no idea about the source material, and then they're like, that was a load of rubbish, they don't explain that, and I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, haven't they?
I suppose it doesn't. I understand that. Why? Yeah. Yeah, I'm just looking on Amazon, and there's a bunch of toys and stuff that I kind of want. But they're all from the second film.
Oh, yeah. I remember when the first film came out, I think they only really made Gypsy Danger, as a figurine, because I was looking into getting some, I don't know, paraphernalia. I got badges and pins, because all of the Jaegers, they have their own symbols. So, and the Pan-Pacific, the military organization, they have their own symbol as well. So there would be a lot of, iron-on patches and, enamel pins and things like that. And so I have some of those for, Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka and, the Jaegers that we see in the movie. But they didn't really, like merch-wise, even though it could have been lucrative, actually it was very tame.
Well, here's the 18-inch Pacific Rim scale Gypsy Danger with light-up plasma cannon arm. £71. I don't think so.
Yeah, no, that's a lot.
I don't want it that much. I think, Gypsy Danger's the best design. I do like Striker Eureka as well. You don't get a good enough look at the other two for me to make kind of a determination. I mean, I have tried pausing it and stuff. And I suppose I could play the microtransaction-riddled PS3 game if I wanted to.
Oh, yes. Oh, it's so clunky, the game. Oh, my God. Yeah, like, I played it briefly, and I really tried to get into it. I wanted to, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah, but the problem is you get one fight, and then it starts asking you to pay for it. And it's like, well, see if you just charged me a £10 for the whole thing, I would probably buy it, to be honest. And then think it was crap, but I would still buy it. So, yeah. Oh, there's a Cherno Alpha figure, £62. Yeah, I don't want that. Not for that kind of.
I like the look of Cherno Alpha. I like that it's rust buckety, just like massive, really old looking because it's the oldest Jaeger in the fleet, and it's still kicking about because it's Russian made, and it's well made.
Yeah. It's robust. Yeah, I think it's the best word for it.
Robust. That's an excellent word. Yes. Yes, sir. Absolutely, it's robust.
And the creature designs are amazing as well. I love the idea that Del Toro said you have to make it look like someone could wear a costume. They have to be that kind of. It has to be that kind of Japanese monster movie style where if it was made 40 years ago, people would be wearing costumes.
But also, the creature design has that distinctive Del Toro feel with the, multiple little eyes in weird places.
Yeah.
Like the mouths and like the head shapes of all of them, like they're so diverse and geometric, and it really evokes Pan's Labyrinth. It just really like kind of has a very similar feel.
Yeah, it's really cool. And what else? What other designs is there? I think that's it. Yeah, there's so many creatures that you just get glimpses of as well. I mean, I think there was over 100 designed for the film. And they were just the production crew were just voting on their favourites every week, and then that was the one that would get made. But some of them you only see for a second, just in the flashbacks and whatever else. So a lot of work went into just making it work, even if you're only catching something for a second or two. And there's all sorts of Jaeger designs that you only get a glimpse of as well. Exactly.
I'm kind of interested to see where the sequel is going to take sort of the evolution of Jaegers in during downtime, because I don't know that they ever expected the rift to open again in any way, shape, or form. And how quickly do they come up with these new designs? Have they been developing them? What's the deal there?
They just use them for other stuff, I suppose. They could.
Maybe.
Yeah. And as a kind of last thing, another thing I love about this film is the soundtrack. I think the score is excellent. The rock soundtrack.
Oh, yes. Thank you for mentioning this. I always rave about the Pacific Rim soundtrack. It's Ramin Djawadi, who also did Game of Thrones and Prison Break.
And Iron Man. The first one, anyway.
Yeah, he is incredible. He does such great work with themes and motifs and stuff that kind of appear in different orchestrations, in different ways. But also that great guitar theme. It's just so good.
Well, that was Tom Morello that did that, and then it was kind of mixed in, and it was just it fits it so well, and it's a good soundtrack, and I wonder what they'll do with it in the sequel.
Yeah, it's true. I'm always keen to see musically what they do with a score of a film can definitely inform, make or break it, really.
Yeah.
Because a mediocre film with a really great score can affect you a lot more as a viewer than if the score is kind of forgettable. So, yes.
Yeah. It just makes those cool scenes even cooler. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not all, but it's a lot of it. And
well, yeah, you got to have a good backdrop for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be maybe be worthwhile coming back and talking about the sequel once we've both seen it.
I think so. Yes.
Just to kind of see what we think. Even if it's
round
rubbish.
off the discussion. I'll try to read the Pacific Rim novels. Tell you what the deal is with with that prequel book.
Yeah. Because I'm curious to see how it turns out. It's one of those. I don't have high hopes, but I think I'll be interested anyway. I think when I'm sitting there in the cinema, I'll be like, right, I'm ready to see what it has to give me.
Yeah.
It's a first time film director as well, Stephen S. DeKnight, which is a weird choice. I mean, he's directed TV, but
yeah, he's worked on a lot of projects that are pretty much classics in the genre. He's worked on Buffy.
Yeah.
He's mates, I guess, with Whedon, because he's also worked on Dollhouse.
Daredevil when it was good.
Mm-hmm. When it was good. Ooh, shots fired. I'm interested to see what he will do. I don't knock first-time directors, for doing it. It's a thing that Hollywood does now. They will take a film director who maybe has done a couple of little things here and there, like a good indie film, give them a big blockbuster, set them off into the wild, and see what they do with it. Yeah. And some of them have turned out great results, Rian Johnson being one. Yeah. Wes Ball, I think, has done a really good job with the Maze Runner movies. He came from just having done shorts. Even Trevorrow, he did really well with Jurassic World. So
I would disagree there. I hate that film.
Oh really? I thought it was fun, but then again, I wasn't too attached to the original. So that's a conversation for another time.
Well, there could be a Jurassic Park podcast coming up.
Yeah, Neil Before Pod fans, stay tuned. Yes, so I think that it's great to give first-time directors a big project that they can, realize all their dreams, because that's amazing. It's what they do with it. They should be
ready for it, though, because there's a different skill set to making one of these things work. And you've got, for every Ryan Coogler, you'll have a Josh Trank.
Yeah, true. That's true.
There's more to that film than just him, but I wouldn't say it's the stuff that he did was especially good. So it didn't seem like he knew what he was doing to begin with. So it's not as if his version would have been better, but that Fant Four Stick for those that don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I defend the Fantastic Four film. I don't think it was the worst, but again, a conversation for another time. We're derailing here. Yeah. I don't know. Let's see what DeKnight will do. I don't know if he's good or bad yet. I guess we'll see.
He's good at TV.
This could make or break his career.
Yeah. So I wonder if all the character stuff will be good, and then I suppose its second unit kicks in. When it comes to the action stuff, it's almost like the recent Power Rangers movie. It's like 2/3 of or 3/4 of this. I forget the director's name. Dean Israeli. That's it. It's 3/4 of that kind of teenage Breakfast Clubbish type film that he was making, and then at the end, the special effects guys step in and finish it off for a Power Rangers episode, and that kind of works. But I don't know. I don't know enough about the business as well to be saying this.
We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. I think there's a big asterisk hovering over all of this. There's a lot that fills me with trepidation and concern. It's we've got a first-time director. The original scriptwriters have stepped away. They've just kind of washed their hands off this thing, and they were the life and blood, the life and soul of Pacific Rim. What would this movie have been if Travis Beacham hadn't written it? So with him out of the picture and with Del Toro out of the picture, I don't know what we're looking at all.
Then again, it could be the aliens to Pacific Rim's Alien. So who knows?
Who knows? If it's much better than the original, I'll tip my hat. I'll say I was wrong.
Yeah.
I was wrong to be so worried.
Go on record.
Yeah, there's hope for blockbuster cinema yet. I suppose I'm open to that, and I'd be happy. I'd be happy to see it be like an actually genuinely good story, entertaining. A good continuation of what the first film was, satisfying answers and all of that. I would definitely love to see a good Pacific Rim sequel. That being said, I'm not holding my breath. So
we'll soon see.
Yeah.
So, just to wrap up, do you have any kind of final declarative statements that you'd like to make before?
5 out of 5 stars, would recommend. If you haven't seen Pacific Rim and this 2-hour podcast hasn't convinced you that it's amazing, I don't know what to tell you, friends. Because I'm going to send this to some people who disagree with me on Pacific Rim. And, that's all, folks, I have to say. I think I've touched on everything. This is, it's one of those things. It's one of those films that is definitely divisive. There's no middle ground. You can't think Pacific Rim was okay. And perhaps that's good. It's good that it's either great or it's not great. You know what I mean? Or it's terrible for people. It really explains a lot about people's film taste.
Yeah.
So,
it's reasonable. Yeah. I would just recommend that people watch it. It's some people use the justification of it's with certain films. Some people use the justification of you just leave your brain at the door and have a good time. And I don't think that's this film, although I've seen it described as that.
I know.
And I think you could leave your brain at the door and just wait for the monsters to appear and start fighting the robots, but then there'll be a good hour of the film where you're really bored.
Yeah.
Because there's an hour where not a lot of that happens.
Yeah, it's surprisingly not as action-filled as people expect it to be.
Yeah, it's one of those, the trailers show you elements of all the action sequences, or at least most of them, but then the film actually has this long chunk of time where they're cutting about in this Shatterdome, talking to one another, and that's quite confident. There's confidence there where it's like, yeah, we believe in our characters, we believe in our story, and it's like, or it might just be, we don't have enough money to show this much fighting, so who knows? But I suppose the 1960s science fiction, the original series Star Trek mentality is we don't have the money for visual effects, we have to make our characters interesting.
But that's also something that I really enjoy in independent cinema. I love a good low-budget indie sci-fi movie, because that's really where the good filmmaking and where the good script writing comes in.
Yeah.
Good low-budget indie sci-fi movies can really bring out the best of sci-fi and the best of, just pure character-driven storytelling. One of the examples I always bring is Being Human, the BBC series.
I've never seen that, but I'm aware of it.
Yeah, so there's a moment in, I think, season 4 where there's a massive time jump and stuff happens, and instead of, obviously this is BBC, they didn't really have much money when they were making the show, and so they set a conversation between a character who hasn't seen the events, a character who's lived through them, and sound effects of what happened, in the background. And I just thought that was so clever and so emotional. I didn't need to see what they were describing, because I could see it in my mind's eye, and that's always better. So yeah, Pacific Rim doesn't do that as much, because obviously, a lot of it is just it's still in a CGI kind of background, just fewer battles than you would expect.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So let's hope for the sequel doing more of the same, or improving on the same, or, you know, I would take just being slightly less good. So,
yeah, let's cross our fingers and our toes that it isn't terrible. At this point, that would be good enough.
Yeah, I wonder if I don't think it's been around long enough to be called a cult classic, but it enjoys some form of cult status.
It has a cult following for sure. I don't know that it's a classic yet because it's been 5 years, so I guess time has gone by, but I refrain from classic status. Let's wait another 15 years and revisit that.
Yeah. Cool. I don't think I've got anything else to say. I think I've covered it in as much detail as
I think so.
I could think of, or that anyone ever has. I don't know. I think the only person that's thought more about this are the people that made it. But
hardly. I don't know about that. Now you make me feel like I've talked too much.
Not at all.
Now I'm like, oh God, do I have too many feelings about this movie?
This is the mantra of this podcast. We talk too much.
We talk too much. It's okay.
Yeah, we talk too much and can't be edited. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining for a conversation I've been wanting to have for quite a while. You know, ever since it came out, I've wanted to record my thoughts in some way or another. And never really got the opportunity to. So,
well, thank you very much for giving me a platform to air out all of my thoughts about Pacific Rim. Because, it's one. I would say it's one of my favorite sci-fi films of the last few years. It's really stuck with me. I rewatch it a lot. And there was a period that I was involved, like in the fandom for the film. There was a thing called Jaegercon, which was an online. Yeah, it was an online convention. So I think it lasted about a week. I think on Tumblr.
Yeah.
And like people made fan art. I made funny memes about the Gypsy is analog line. Where
that was hilarious.
Yeah, it's like
that gets me every time.
Oh, the Jaegers are digital. No, Gypsy is analog. And I just photoshopped like hipster glasses on Raleigh and Mako and had them like hold an analog photo camera. It's still my most popular Tumblr post to date. 5,000 notes. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, you need to send me the link and I'll get it in the show notes.
Oh, thank you. Yes, of course I will. But yeah, like it's been a part of my life somehow, Pacific Rim. It renewed my faith in blockbuster films, because at the time there were a lot of kind of vapid blockbusters, and then this comes along and it's in like IMAX 3D, like spectacular, and it was great, and I really liked it. And from that moment on, I was like, all right, like even if something looks completely garbage, maybe it isn't complete garbage. Maybe give it a chance, you know? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Give it a chance. Give it a chance. Absolutely. Another great thing about the analog declaration is, you know, that all those digital holographic displays.
Oh yeah, Gypsy is analog somehow.
Except it isn't. I don't think whoever wrote that line understands what analog means.
Yeah, we don't think about it too deeply. Yeah.
No.
It's a hilarious line, and it makes for some excellent memes.
Yeah.
Go to gypsyisanalog.tumblr.com and you'll see what I mean.
The link is in the show notes, or in the future in the show notes. All right, so thank you very much for joining. We will reconvene for the sequel. We'll set up some time for that, get that talked about once we have the opportunity to see it. Yeah. I will see it on opening day, I would imagine. I don't like waiting. I'm not the kind of guy that waits. So, I'll see it on opening day. I don't know. Maybe they will do a midnight screening. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Oh, maybe.
I don't know if I would do that, to be honest. To see the first one in IMAX again, I suppose. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what Cineworld do. I think they would have announced it by now, though. Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you for having me.
I will catch you for the sequel.
Yeah. See you soon. Or talk to you soon.
That was our discussion on Pacific Rim. Thanks to YouTuber LittleVMills for the supplied music. If If you like what you heard, then hit that subscribe button on iTunes, YouTube, or any major podcasting app. We hope you'll join us on the next Kneel Before Pod.